You ever step out of your truck after 3 years away and instantly know something's wrong, just by the way the wind carries a scent you don't recognize? For me, it was the sharp tang of cheap perfume drifting over old cedar and cold mountain air. That and the sound of heels, designer ones no less, clacking across the porch my grandfather built with his own 2 hands back in '34. I didn't even get 2 steps toward the front door before she came into view. Brenda Weatherb. That's a name you don't forget. There she was, standing on my porch, waving a stack of paperwork like she was a sheriff, the mayor, and the governor all rolled into one. "You don't understand," she yelled, the papers shaking in her fist. "I am the government here. This is my valley, and you need to get out." You know, I've been yelled at before. Army drills, overseas, you name it. But nothing stings like hearing it right on your family's land, especially after years away. There was this look in her eye, full of fake confidence, like she thought she could scare me off with bureaucracy and a bad attitude. She started slapping condemnation notices on the doorframe, all emergency fees and forged violations. I just stood there, letting her rant, trying not to show my hand. There was a metallic taste in my mouth, like adrenaline and old pennies. But on the outside, I was all calm. I kept thinking, you really have no idea who you're dealing with, do you? This place isn't just property. It's blood, sweat, and memory. It's my grandfather's whole legacy, and you're about to find out what that means. But let me back up a second. Because if you're going to get why Brenda Weatherb was so damn confident, and why she ended up going down harder than anyone expected, you need the full story. I'm Jake Thornfield, Staff Sergeant, 34 years old, not much for small talk, and the only living Thornfield left on this side of the Rockies. The cabin? That was Ezra's pride. He was a Depression-era kind of guy, didn't trust banks or bureaucrats, kept every receipt, deed, and boundary marker in neat rows of metal cabinets. I'd been away for 3 years. Army keeps you moving. But my neighbor Hank Morrison, Vietnam vet, pipe smoker, a guy you want on your side, kept an eye on things for me. When I was a kid, the smell of his pipe tobacco and gasoline meant safety. I guess we both thought those old mountain problems, coyotes, bad weather, maybe a busted water line, would be the only things to worry about. Nobody expected what Hank started calling suburban Karen warfare. Brenda Weatherb, age 52, showed up 2 years ago with her meek husband, Lloyd, and a drive to run every inch of Pine Ridge like her own personal fiefdom. She didn't have kids, but she sure had free time. And somehow, in less than a year, she'd gotten herself elected as president of Pine Ridge Mountain Estates HOA. Here's the thing. There wasn't a Pine Ridge Mountain Estates HOA. Not legally. She just started showing up with official-looking papers and talking like she had all the power in the county. She'd convinced new folks they needed professional community management, then started handing out violation notices for stuff like unauthorized porch paint and non-standard mailbox alignment. Leather portfolio, measuring tape, sunglasses. She looked like an HGTV villain in real life. According to Hank, Brenda first came to my place 6 months into my deployment. He saw her out there, pacing, snapping photos, scribbling notes. Her first move was pure intimidation, official-looking notices, fines for structural issues, and fire hazards. They were fancy, I'll give her that. Embossed seals, legalese, all the trappings of authority. She even got a couple of my elderly neighbors to sign some emergency enforcement petition. But here's what chilled me to my core. Over 12 grand in fake fees while I was overseas. Every month, another phony penalty for things like unauthorized modifications to a cabin that hadn't changed since 1934. You ever feel a burn behind your eyes that's half rage, half heartbreak? That was me, reading those notices in my old living room, boots still dusty from the drive. What made it worse? Brenda had run this scam on 2 other military families while they were deployed. A Navy couple pressured into selling. An Army family driven clean off their land after months of harassment. She targeted people who couldn't fight back. But she had no idea who Ezra Thornfield was or what he left behind. See, my grandfather, quiet, stubborn, fiercely private, kept everything. Deeds, receipts, survey maps, original claims. He'd even left handwritten notes about property lines and mineral rights. The more I dug through his cabinets, the more I realized Brenda was wading way out of her depth. Every phony violation, every threat, every arrogant stroll down my drive. She was building a bonfire on top of a powder keg she didn't even know was there. The real fireworks started 2 weeks after I came home. It was early, crisp, the kind of Colorado morning that makes you want to drink your coffee slow and listen to the wind in the trees. Instead, what I heard was the rumble of 3 vehicles crawling up my road, one of them a county truck. Out came Brenda, high heels and perfume slicing through the morning air, dragging along a guy in khakis clutching a clipboard like his life depended on it. "Mr. Thornfield," she announced, voice echoing across the valley. "This is Gary Hoffman from County Building Inspection. We're here for the overdue structural assessment." Gary was sweating through his shirt before he hit the porch. Brenda pointed out violations with the energy of a prosecutor in front of a firing squad, foundation cracks, illegal wiring, whatever sounded official. But every time Gary tried to clarify, Brenda cut him off. That's when I caught the first real sign of what was going on. Gary pulled out a citation form already half-filled. He hadn't even looked at the cabin yet. This wasn't an inspection. It was a setup. Then, as fate would have it, Gary bent down and a receipt fluttered out of his pocket. $500, paid by B, weathered for structural consultation. My hands went cold. I let them finish, said nothing, just took the citation Gary handed me. Condemned, effective immediately. Brenda was practically beaming, already talking about demolition schedules. But I'd seen enough. 3 years in Army intel teaches you patience. I waited, played dumb, and that night started digging. Turns out Gary Hoffman wasn't certified for structural assessment. Hell, he wasn't certified for much beyond checking smoke alarms. I documented everything, photographed the receipt, scanned the citation, got his license status from the state. Then I filed complaints with every agency that'd listen. Within 48 hours, the county reversed the condemnation. Gary Hoffman got suspended for falsifying documents and taking bribes. Brenda, meanwhile, doubled down. She filed a police report saying I'd threatened her and Gary. The sound of her heels on my porch got angrier every day as she circled, taking photos, making phone calls, escalating with every setback. But what she never realized, what she never could understand, was that I wasn't just a stubborn cabin owner. I was the only Thornfield left. My grandfather's blood ran in my veins. I was documenting every step, every word, building a case as solid as the stone chimney out back. That's when she brought in the big guns. 3 days after Gary's suspension, I'm out back splitting wood when Brenda rolls up again, this time with 3 elderly neighbors and a lawyer who looked like he'd just crawled out of a thrift store clearance bin. Brenda announced to the community that my cabin was a threat to valley safety. Sweet Mrs. Henderson, bless her, asked why the county said my place was fine. Brenda waved it off. Corrupt officials, military conspiracy, the whole 9 yards. The lawyer, Ricky Dalton, handed me a stack of legal threats. But he'd made a rookie mistake. His bar number, right at the bottom, matched a disbarred attorney in California. Real estate fraud, of course. I checked it in front of everyone. Ricky went pale, started making excuses, then fled to his car. The neighbors were confused, angry. Turns out, none of them had ever signed HOA documents. Brenda had told them it was a neighborhood watch petition, then used their signatures for her own made-up authority. Within hours, I'd reported the lawyer, explained everything to my neighbors, and watched as Ricky got a legal smackdown that made Brenda's fake threats look like child's play. But she wouldn't quit. Next, she went after my military career, calling my unit, making up stories about my mental health, painting me as a violent, unstable veteran. I started getting calls at all hours from my chain of command. The metallic taste of rage was back, every time the phone rang. Brenda wasn't just trying to steal my land now. She was trying to destroy everything I'd built. And she was just getting started. Let me tell you, it takes a special kind of audacity to mess with a person's career, their family, and their peace of mind, all at once. Brenda Weatherb? She had it in spades. Her next move went from annoying to outright criminal, faster than you could say, "Get off my porch." One afternoon, I come driving back from town, truck bed full of groceries and hardware, humming along to old Johnny Cash. From the minute my tires hit gravel, I feel something's off. My gate, the wrought iron one my granddad welded himself back in '62, is hanging wide open, swinging in the wind. There are fresh tire tracks cutting through the mud straight up to the cabin. That cold, tight feeling crawls into my chest. The air's thick with diesel fumes and disturbed earth. I get out slow, listening, watching. That's when I hear it. Power tools, angry and loud, coming from behind the workshop. I round the corner, and there she is. Brenda, in designer boots, standing like she owns the place, shouting orders to some local contractor who's swinging a sledgehammer at my fence posts. 15 feet inside my property line. She spots me and starts waving more of her paperwork. "Mr. Thornfield, this land is subject to county easement. The spring and the next 15 acres are being returned to public access." I could hardly believe the words coming out of her mouth. She'd hung a new chain and padlock on my own gate. Not my lock, hers. There's a laminated private property. "Keep out by order of Pine Ridge, HOA," sign swinging from the chain. I just stand there, heart pounding. Rage, disbelief, pick your poison. She keeps going, rattling off environmental statutes and made-up government agencies like she's reading from playbook. My jaw tightens. I pull out my phone, start recording. "Ma'am, you're trespassing, damaging private property." And every word is going to the sheriff. Her face, oh, you should have seen it, twisted through 6 emotions before settling on defiance. "This is public land now. You're interfering with county business. Leave or I'll call the authorities." I swear I almost laughed. She was so far down the rabbit hole of her own fantasy. She honestly thought she was some kind of lawmaker. That night, I set up trail cameras. Old habit from deployments. When in doubt, gather evidence. If you've never watched a grown man sneak onto someone else's property at 2 in the morning with a bolt cutter and a radio, let me paint you a picture. Lloyd Weatherb, Brenda's husband, scurrying along my fence line, snipping wire and moving markers, while Brenda's voice crackled in his ear. "Move it 10 more feet, Lloyd. We need to show adverse possession before he can fight us legally." Adverse possession. You ever hear of that? It's a real legal thing, but it takes years, decades even of open notorious use. Not 2 weeks of midnight sabotage with your wife whispering directions from the road. She was staging a hostile takeover, and she thought she could get away with it because I was alone. By noon the next day, I'd handed the sheriff high-def video of Lloyd and Brenda trespassing, damaging property, and basically making fools of themselves on tape. Sheriff Tom Rodriguez, a straight shooter, big mustache, seen it all, didn't even blink. "Jake, you got her dead to rights," he said. "Let's do this by the book." The county confirmed. Once again, Brenda had 0 legal claim. The contractor? Not licensed for surveys, just a guy with a truck and a big mouth. You'd think this would have been the end of it, but not Brenda. She went nuclear, filing complaints against the sheriff. Said he was biased toward veterans. She even tried to organize a town meeting about veteran extremism. I'd seen delusions before, but this was something else. Brenda was out there every day, committing actual crimes, and still convinced she was the victim. Sometimes I wondered if she believed her own lies, or if it was just too late to back down. All the while, I started digging deeper into my family's history. I pulled out my granddad's old filing cabinets, unlocked boxes that hadn't seen daylight in years. Smell of leather, cedar, old paper. Felt like a vault. Ezra had documented everything. Every land transfer, every letter from the county, every weird little map. Then I found it, tucked in oilcloth, marked in my grandfather's shaky hand. Do not open until necessary. The original 1934 federal homestead deed, with a hand-drawn map and a bunch of official stamps. Turns out, Ezra hadn't just claimed the usual 160 acres. He'd filed for subsurface mineral rights over the whole damn valley. 2,400 acres. Not just the land under my cabin, but under every house in Pine Ridge Mountain Estates. Mineral rights, worth millions, potentially. My coffee went cold as I ran my finger over those survey lines. There were geological reports, gas deposits, offers from companies dating back to the 60s. Ezra wrote, "No drilling while I'm alive. Family decides when ready." The old man could have been rich, but he chose legacy. The more I read, the more I realized that Brenda had no clue what kind of land she was standing on. She thought she was running the show with her forged violations, but she'd built her house of cards on top of a gold mine, literally and legally. I had the proof, I had the history, and now, thanks to Brenda's stupidity, I had a hell of a motive to use it. I went to Denver, to Sarah Palmer, a real estate attorney who didn't take crap from anyone. I dropped Ezra's documents on her conference table. She looked at me, then at the papers, and started laughing. "Mr. Thornfield, you realize you just handed me a legal nuke, right?" We spent 3 hours plotting out what she called the weather protocol. Step 1. File for a quiet title lawsuit to assert mineral rights over the valley. Step 2. Federal criminal referrals for targeting military families. Step 3. Civil damages for every penny Brenda tried to steal. Sarah said, "You're about to own these people's nightmares." Back at the cabin, the air felt different, charged, like the moment before storm. I started prepping like I was heading into enemy territory. Modern surveys, detailed maps, evidence boards, a full dossier of every one of Brenda's frauds and forgeries. Sheriff Tom and I coordinated our moves down to the minute. We'd do this clean. We'd do it public. And still, Brenda was out there, running around with laminated signs and made-up titles. Her husband, Lloyd, just looked tired. Her supporters, fewer every day. But Brenda? She got meaner, more desperate, like a gambler down to her last chip. The night before the town meeting, I sat on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun sink behind a ridge. For the first time in months, I felt ready. Not cocky, not safe, but ready. You ever get that feeling before something big? Like the air is holding its breath, just waiting for the match to strike. In the dark, my phone vibrated. "Sarah, tomorrow's your day, Jake. Make it count." I looked up at the old stars, breathed in deep, and told myself, "Ezra, I hope you're watching. We're about to make things right." Morning of the town hall, I barely slept. You know how it is, mind running through every worst-case scenario, replaying details, feeling the weight of the whole valley's history on your shoulders. The air was cold, mountain sharp, coffee extra bitter. I loaded up my truck with Ezra's files, legal papers, even that old survey transit he trusted more than any lawyer. Before I left, I double-checked the trail cameras and kissed the porch railing for luck. Might sound silly, but in that moment, it felt like talking to an old friend. Driving into Pine Ridge, the place looked the same as ever. Quiet streets, deer picking through backyard gardens, the sun coming up over snow-capped peaks. But I knew it wasn't the same. Not for me. Not for Brenda. Not for anybody who'd gotten caught in her hurricane of crazy. The town hall was packed, standing room only. People murmured, shot glances my way, some worried, some embarrassed, a few just curious for the show. There were TV cameras, deputies, even an FBI agent in a cheap parka trying to look like he belonged. Brenda waltzed in late, wearing her best suit and that plastic smile, dragging poor Lloyd behind her and flanked by 3 diehard supporters who still thought she was the queen of Pine Ridge. Mayor Davidson opened the meeting, barely got through the pledge before Brenda popped up like a jack-in-the-box. "Mr. Mayor, we have a crisis. This valley is in danger from illegal occupation, unsafe structures," and she was off to the races, waving blown-up photos of my cabin, talking about military-style fortifications and threats to public safety. I watched people's faces. Some nodded, but most just looked tired. Brenda had been burning them out for months. Finally, I stood up from the back, cleared my throat, and walked forward. No one said a word. Brenda tried to cut me off. "Mr. Mayor, he's under investigation. He's a danger. This isn't appropriate." But Mayor Davidson held up his hand. "Let's hear him out." I laid Ezra's original deed across the table, maps and all. The old paper rustled in the quiet. "What you're looking at," I said, "is the original 1934 homestead claim for this valley. Not just surface rights, mineral rights. All 2,400 acres, including the land under every house in Pine Ridge Mountain Estates." There was a ripple through the crowd. I pulled out the geological surveys, the federal stamps, the letters from energy companies. I laid it all out. Ezra Thornfield protected this land for 90 years. No development, no drilling. That's the law, and I have the paperwork to back it. Brenda turned white as a ghost, sputtered, "Those are forgeries. He's manipulating evidence." But I wasn't done. I played the trail cam footage, Lloyd bolt cutters in hand, Brenda's voice crackling through the walkie-talkie. Moved the marker 10 feet closer. I played Buck Morrison's recorded threats. Sometimes accidents happen in remote areas. I showed police reports, fake legal filings, even the bar records for Brenda's lawyer. People started muttering, a few cursing under their breath. Mrs. Henderson was openly crying, whether from relief, anger, or shame, I'll never know. Jenny Martinez from KPRD TV zoomed in with her camera, catching every raw moment. Then Sarah Palmer, my attorney, stood up and handed Mayor Davidson a copy of the quiet title lawsuit, federal complaint, and affidavits from the other military families Brenda had targeted. "These documents prove a pattern of fraud, extortion, and harassment," Sarah said, voice steady and clear. "This is not just a local problem. It's a federal crime." Sheriff Tom Rodriguez stepped forward, arrest warrant in hand. "Brenda Weatherb, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, bribery, property destruction, and attempted poisoning." He clicked the cuffs on her wrists. Brenda screamed, called it a setup, blamed everyone but herself. Lloyd just stared at the floor, mouth moving but no sound coming out. Buck Morrison tried to sneak out the side door. FBI agent Kim blocked him, badge flashing. I wish I could say it felt triumphant. Mostly, it felt like standing in the eye of a storm that had finally blown itself out. Exhaustion, relief, anger, and sadness, all mixed together. You ever win a fight and realize you lost pieces of yourself along the way? That's what it felt like. 6 months later, Brenda was sitting in federal prison. 3 years for fraud, more charges pending. Mountain Vista Energy filed bankruptcy after the scandal broke. Their executives are still tied up in court. Lloyd divorced Brenda, moved to Florida, left everything behind. Sheriff Tom got an award for his handling of the case. As for me, well, I wasn't the same Jake Thornfield as before. That's the thing about battles. Sometimes you win, but you come out changed. But here's where the story flips, just a little. With Sarah's help, I used the settlement money to set up the Ezra Thornfield Environmental Fund, a conservation easement over the whole valley. For million in gas stays in the ground, and nobody can drill without the community's permission. The old cabins, now a historical site, with tours for local kids and veterans. The community started coming together again. Pine Ridge finally formed a real, legal HOA, transparent, neighborly, focused on things that matter. Hank got a job running the maintenance shed. Mrs. Henderson helps with events. People started looking out for each other instead of hiding behind notices and threats. Me? I married Sarah. We got hitched right by the spring Brenda tried to poison. Every year, we host Thornfield Day, a festival celebrating veterans, environmental stewardship, and the idea that doing the hard, boring work of reading old documents can actually save your life. Looking back, it wasn't the biggest, loudest, or meanest person who won. It was the one who kept records, paid attention, and stayed standing when everyone else ran out of steam. You might be wondering, what's the point? It's this: know your rights. Know your history. Don't take anybody's word just because they shout the loudest or wave the fanciest looking paper. And if you're in the military or you love someone who is, set up someone to watch your back. Scammers count on you being too busy or too far away to fight. Don't make it easy for them. All these years later, when I step out onto that porch and breathe in the sharp pine air, sometimes I still hear the echo of Brenda's heels. But mostly, I hear the quiet that comes from peace finally settling back into a place after a long, hard storm. I wish I could say that after Brenda went to prison and Mountain Vista Energy folded, everything just fell into place, that there was some neat storybook ending. But life, especially out here, doesn't tie itself up with a bow. There are loose ends, scars you don't see, and sometimes the victories feel heavier than the battles. After the dust settled, my first instinct was to keep my head down. I spent weeks cleaning up, fixing fences, hauling away trash, patching up what Brenda and her crew had torn up. Hank was always nearby, hand steady even when mine shook. There were days when the wind rattled the windows and I'd half expect to see Brenda's SUV creeping up the driveway or catch her voice in the trees. Trauma, I guess, leaves a deeper mark than barbed wire or spray paint. But then something surprising happened. Neighbors I barely knew started stopping by. They'd bring pie or just stand awkwardly on the porch with stories about Brenda. The fines, the threats, the way she made them afraid to plant sunflowers or hang holiday lights. It wasn't just me. Her storm had swept through every corner of the valley. That first real HOA meeting after everything broke, you could feel the relief in the room, like someone finally cracked a window in a house that had been shut too long. Mrs. Henderson, sweet old lady who'd been duped into signing fake petitions, stood up, voice trembling, and apologized to me in front of everyone. "Jake, I should have known better. I'm so sorry. I didn't even have words." I just nodded, because what else do you say? We talked about boundaries, not just the kind you measure with surveyors, but the ones you draw between fear and hope. About how easy it is to get tricked by someone who acts like they're in charge. About how the only way to beat that kind of poison is together. Hank made a joke about HOA rules for the thickness of homemade pies, and the whole room actually laughed. Sarah, she fit right in. She helped set up workshops. How to read a deed, how to spot a forged document, how to check an attorney's credentials before you let them scare you. I watched people get their confidence back, step by step. The Ezra Thornfield Environmental Fund grew. We used some of the settlement money to build a little community center, a place with a tool library, after-school programs for kids, and meeting rooms anyone could use. Every fall, we run a scholarship for military kids, just like I promised. Some of those kids go off to college and send back postcards, and I keep every single one on the fridge. Sarah and I, we had a quiet wedding right next to the spring. Crystal clear again, thank God. I fixed up the old mining gear, mounted it on the lawn as a kind of living museum. Veterans come by, swap stories, sometimes fix things that don't need fixing just for the company. On Thornfield Day, people bring their dogs and their kids, eat barbecue, and remember what happens when a neighborhood stands together. I still get letters sometimes, folks from other towns, even other states, asking how we did it. How you fight back when someone tries to take what's yours and you feel alone. I always tell them the same thing. Start with the paperwork. Know what's yours, and never throw out an old deed or survey. Keep records of everything. Talk to your neighbors, even if it feels awkward. And when the fight comes, stand your ground. Don't go it alone if you don't have to. If you're military or your family is, don't trust that just because you're away, everything's safe. Ask a friend to check on your place. Install cameras. File copies of your documents in more than one place. Predators go after people they think are distracted or defenseless. You don't have to give them that power. But you know, the thing I keep coming back to, it wasn't the legal victories or the big news headlines that felt like real wins. It was the day after the last lawsuit was settled, When Hank knocked on my door with a box of old tools and said, "Well, boss, I figured you'd need some help fixing up the place." We drank coffee on the porch, watched the sun climb over Ezra's Ridge, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. Some scars never go away. Some lessons you have to learn the hard way. I'll always remember the way Brenda looked, standing on that porch, so sure she was untouchable. I'll remember the fear, the sleepless nights, the way my heart pounded every time a strange car turned up the driveway. But I'll also remember the way the valley came back to life, how neighbors learned to trust each other, how one person's stubborn record-keeping could save an entire community. So yeah, that's how I almost lost everything. My grandfather's cabin, my family's history, even my peace of mind, to one woman's greed and a corporation's ambition. But it's also how I found out just how deep my roots run, and how much stronger a place can be when folks dig in together. If you're listening, maybe you're dealing with your own version of Brenda Weatherb. Maybe your HOA is a nightmare, or someone's trying to push you off what's rightfully yours. My advice? Don't let anyone convince you that a fancy stamp or a loud voice is more powerful than the truth. Find your people. Stand up even when you're scared. And remember, real authority doesn't come from yelling or paperwork. It comes from doing the hard, honest work, day after day, year after year. Now, if you'll excuse me, the sun's coming up and there's work to do. The mountain's quiet again, and I intend to keep it that way.